Welcome to All Things Financial with Jack Driscoll. Each week, Jack takes on all things you thought were hard to understand about your finances and makes it fun, easy, but most of all interesting. From insurance to the best way to save your money and squeeze the most out of the dollars you put aside for your rainy day. And now, you have a friend in the money business. Here's your host, Jack Driscoll.
Welcome back to another edition of All Things Financial. You know, we started the new year off with a bang, actually, but last week what I was going through were a couple of the different concepts that I ended up last year with, and that was making New Year's resolutions. And then we got into a couple concepts last week because it's the start of the New Year's. Are you still on track with your New Year's resolutions? And we talked about savings and pay yourself first. Today's show, I was thinking about what I think, if I was asked the question, what do you think is the most important thing in financial planning? If you had to take all the different concepts, strategies, tools, resources, and purposes of financial planning, and if someone asked me what, after 40 years, do I think is the most important part or thought about financial planning, what's the most important thing? And I thought about that, and I think it's living below our means. I think if I had to sum up what's the one most important thing in financial planning, it would be living below our means. I think every other concept I've ever seen and addressed in all of the years has surrounded itself around people don't have enough money in retirement. People lose what they have in the markets and can't afford to get it back. People go into nursing homes and lose all their money. People pay too much in taxes. People don't have enough in their 401ks. People look at their car and home insurance. People, every area, college planning. I really think it all boils down to, if we followed one rule, living below our means, which means, and I touched on this last week, it means no matter what we earn, we live on maybe 90%. If we do that, what we'll find, I think, is we won't have to take as much risk in our investments. You know, a lot of times we're taking risks to try to earn more, but a lot of times we're taking risks because we have to earn more. We don't have enough money saved. We have to earn more, or we're not going to make it. Or worse yet, we get to retirement, realize we don't have enough, and we have to keep our retirement assets at risk, continuously trying to earn more. If we had an overabundance of savings by the time we got to retirement, we might have found ourselves in the situation where we would not have to expose our retirement assets to risk trying to earn more. We might find we don't have to earn more. We might be able to accept what would be considered very conservative rates of return, just matching inflation. We might be able to just have our funds just match whatever inflation's going up. If it's going up 2% and taxes are 1%, we might be able to structure portfolios that only have to generate about a 3% growth rate just to keep pace with inflation and taxes. And you know, you run into a situation, if you have $300,000, for example, and you don't need the money for a while, you're either 10 or 15 years from retirement, or you're in retirement, but you're looking at Social Security and maybe pensions, whatever sources of income otherwise are adequate. If you do the calculations and you say, what is the result if I have money at 3% earnings or growth rate? That's never going anywhere. But if you looked at that and you said, if I had $300,000 in 10 years, what would I have if I only earned 3% and I didn't try to earn any more, but couldn't go backwards? Or my average return was only 3%. Even if I could go backwards, it's taking a low level of risk versus someone who wants to try to gain 8 or 10% or even 5% in today's world. Folks, if you do the math, 300,000 turns into about 400,000 in 10 years at only 3%. That's a lot. So what I've learned in all my years, what's the one most important thing in financial planning? It's got to be living below our means. I don't say live within our means. I mean living below our means, which is that 90% rule. Pay yourself first, which I touched on last week. Find a way, folks, to pay yourself first, 10%. When I say that, it might sound too large, but then if I say if you have a paycheck of $1,000, take out the first $100, then deposit the other $900. Put the $100 into a savings account, same bank, but a separate account. And put the $900 into the checking and live on that. And have a rule for yourself that only in the most dire of circumstances you'll go back in there. So you didn't lose it. But if you're paid every 2 weeks and 2 weeks later you're able to make it, that $100 is now yours to keep forever. Because prior to doing this, you would have spent the $100 on something. The second thing I'd have to say is, if I say this living below your means, I would then say you're paying yourself first, or you're always saving some money. You set aside that some money and you put it to work. The third component of what I think is the key tripod to financial planning, a three-legged stool that would hold up the rest of the plan. Even though the one most important thing, if we didn't do anything else right, the one most important thing, in my opinion, would be living below your means. The second most important would be always saving money and putting some aside and putting it to work, but not hard work. So I'm saying low risk, growth type expectations, just matching inflation and taxes. And the third would be protecting what you have. I think with all of us, when we think financial planning, we're thinking, I'd like to have a good standard of living, not trying to be rich. I'd like to have a safety reserve set aside for our future and to protect and provide if anything goes wrong. And I'd like to third, have my family, myself, my family, and my business, if you have one, protected if anything goes wrong. Doesn't that make sense? That's a general concept, I think, away from all the textbooks on financial planning, but just talking about what is it? When we say financial planning, what is it? Well, the word planning is, I think, what we all miss. I don't think most of us plan, even for next week. It's been said that there is more effort and time expended by a family planning their next vacation than there is on anything else, including their financial future. That's probably true. The key to financial planning is not the financial, it's the planning. When we look at your own lives and you sit and realize you can change and alter the future of your life through planning in advance and laying out a plan that you'd like to accomplish, that you feel is reasonable based on the resources you have, which means your skills, your abilities. That means working harder at work. That means giving your employer more than they're paying for. That means you getting recognized for promotions. That's what that means. So when I say laying out your life, that means taking advantage of everything that you have resources-wise, planning your future with the resources that are available to you in skills, labor, materials, and income. And you carefully evaluate where everything goes. Where is your time spent? Is your time spent watching TV, or is it on furthering your skills at employment? Or is it spending more time with the family? Only you can decide. But with the process of financial planning, it's planning out your future, not letting your future happen to you, but actually directing to yourself how you will form your future and form your habits to lead toward that future path that you choose to go down. So you're choosing a path. You know within your resources what that path can be. And you lay it out. And the beginning of the year is a good time to lay this out. We call it financial planning. Some call it life planning. But it's dealing with trying to make your life better than it will otherwise be through foresight and advanced planning. And you lay out a map. Here's where I'd like to be by the end of next year. Here's what I'd like to have. I'd like to have more time with the family, or I'd like to have more savings, or I'd like to have a better vacation, or I'd like to start setting aside for college funding, or I'd like to pay down some bills or the mortgage, or I'd like to this, or I'd like to that. I'd like to help out charities. I'd like to help out other family members in need. These are the things that we want you to think about in advance. And we want you to think about, where do I want to be in 1 year? In 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, and you lay it out and you put it down on paper. And then by the time, when do I want to retire? Where do I want to see myself in my job? Do I want to see myself in the same job, or do I want to be in a different job? What do I need to do and change now to form the habits that will lead toward those goals that you're putting down on paper? Folks, that's the basis, I feel, in life planning, which is very closely aligned in financial planning. So we try to align the goals and draw a map of your future the way you'd want it to be, instead of looking in hindsight when you're age 60 or 65 at the map that you followed yourself down the stream wherever the current took you. And you end up saying, I don't know how I got here. I never intended I'd be here. I thought we'd be so much better off. Well, folks, usually that's preventable. Usually you can create your own future. And it's by these incremental, very small planning stages. And then every month you reevaluate your goals and see if you're on track. Are you doing the things, the steps, the habits necessary to make the changes in your life in the future? Requires changes that you make right now in your habits. It's been said that where we are today is a result of what our decisions were last year. So our past decisions and actions have led us to where we are today. If we want to change the course of our life, we change the course of our decisions and our actions. It will have a change, either positive or negative. So if we plan and prepare in advance and tie it in with financial planning, which is sometimes the major resource that holds you back from most of your plans and most of your goals, first you lay out your life planning, and then we come and try to assimilate the financial planning goals in line with your life planning goals. It's hard to do if you haven't made your life planning goals yet, and most of us never do without being prompted to do that. But if we are today where we are today, based on our decisions and actions in the past have led to where we are today, then where we'll be in the future is likely to be where our decisions and actions today will lead. And those we can change. We can change our decisions and actions today to lead us to a more prosperous and healthy place in our future. So what I say is lay out where would you like to be in a year? Where would you like to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20? Who would you like to help? How would you like to help? Would you like to get kids through college? Would you like to help charities? Would you like to help other family members? Would you like to be in a better situation for yourselves? And start laying out your goals right now, even though you don't have the skills to figure out how to plan those changes. Then get to the process of financial planning. Get to a skilled, certified financial planner. Interview financial planners. Find someone who's, I'd say, maybe comfortable for you. We're all different personalities. You want to find a personality in a life-skilled financial planning capacity that you feel you could work with over life on an ongoing basis that can better help you accomplish goals than you can accomplish on your own. So you've got your life goals laid out on a napkin, let's say. You and your wife or husband at home have laid out, you know what, we're not where we want to be. Before we give up all hope, let's lay out where we think we'd like to be within 5, 10, and 20 years and 50 years. And after we're gone, here's what we'd like to have happen. Let's lay these out and then take these goals to someone that can help us, maybe teach us the changes we can make to be able to accomplish these goals. And along with that, we won't forget in the process of financial planning, protecting what you now have. So what we've learned, one of the concepts I'll share with you, there are many, but I'll share one of them with you, is at every stage in life and every stage of the financial plan, before you go further and attempt the next goals, try your best to protect what you have so far from being lost. In other words, try not to go backwards. That means many things in many areas. But a lot of times what it means is get in place life insurance to self-complete your goals. Let's say you're on track. You're saving your 10%. You're paying down your bills. You're setting aside the college funds. You have your structured plans in your 401k aligned with your goals. And then you die. There goes the plan, because the key to the plan was normally the income earners, which are usually both spouses. And if anything happens to one of the income earners, there goes the income and there goes the plan, because the fuel or the food to nourish the plan was the ongoing income. So the biggest contingency we had was loss of the income earner, either due to disability, premature disability, or death. Folks, it's going to happen to some of you, to some of us. So what we do is we realize we hope it doesn't happen to any of us. So we try to build protection goals in before we go to the next advancement goals, so that if anything else happens that we hope doesn't, but can anticipate that it could, the vehicles we put in place can self-complete the remainder of our goals if we don't make it. We could teach you how to do that, folks. But what you want to do is get those protection implementations in place, and before you attempt your next goals or your next stage of your goals, try to shore up the self-completion aspects if anything happens to you. And then we get to the other protection of the fire and the theft. You know, if my home burns down, I want somewhere else, which is an insurance company, to pay to replace my home in return for a nominal cost now, that if it ever happens to me, and I don't think it will, but if it did, that the responsibility has been placed on someone else to replace it in a pooled source of funds. Might only cost me $700 a year to transfer that risk to an insurance company. Or I could save $700 a year. Don't give it to them. And if my home burns down, I'm all on my own. That type of thought process is a risk-reward evaluation. We don't think it's going to happen. So we have the chance or the expectation of the event to consider, which is very low. And then we have the severity of the event if it happens, which is very high. It could be catastrophic. So we evaluate risk in each of our decisions. And we say the risk versus the severity or consequence is what measures, do we transfer that risk or do we assume that risk and keep it? If I have a risk of a loss of an income earner and I transfer a risk that it self-completes all of our future financial goals, if something happens to us income earners prematurely along the way, the cost of that almost always will be minuscule versus the consequence or severity of the risk that I was able to transfer and have self-completing goals if we don't make it. So yes, we will buy that protection and transfer that risk in most cases. Same thing with loss of a house. How about loss of a car? Well, a car might be $20,000 or $50,000, so we might buy the insurance to transfer the risk on loss of a car. But folks, there comes a point. We don't transfer that risk. We assume that risk because we can't afford to go insurance poor. If we buy all the insurances for all the things that all could happen to us, we could end up having no money to save. If we keep buying all those warranties and my dryer goes or my washer goes or whatever, folks, we're getting to the point where is the severity of the consequence justifying all those premiums to transfer those risks to insurance companies? Now, many times, we're into convenience protection, not catastrophic protection. So I want you to think about that when we get to the protection stage, because sometimes we might be wasting money on a consequence that if it ever happened, and it's low likelihood that it will, it's not that big of a deal. It wouldn't wipe us out even if it did. It might set us back a little bit. But if we saved money on all those warranties, we might have had the money to replace the one item that went bad, the one component, if we compiled the savings of all those different warranties. So there comes a point where we have to evaluate risks and evaluate goals. But the summation of this show is what's the one most important thing in all of financial planning, in my opinion: living below your means. So I want to leave you with that. I appreciate your tuning in. This is another edition of All Things Financial. We're out of time for today, but I'll be back again next week. Thanks again for tuning in.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Inc., member FINRA SIPC, and registered investment advisor. Insurance services offered through Driscoll Insurance and Financial Services Inc., which is not affiliated with SagePoint Financial Inc.